telling me that this year their attendance was higher than the previous years, or at least higher than the average attendance, and I would guess largely because of your work on the National Parks documentary. Congratulations.
Thank you. I think so, and it's all across the board in the country. The attendance is up, and little tiny stories in Grand Teton. They fight each year. The Park Service fights each year with the FAA to enlarge the airport that's within the park, and they hate going there. And this year they came in and they said, the FAA said, we saw the documentary, we leave it alone. And up in Yellowstone, where they argue over the number of snowmobiles that come in, and the Park Service wants it here and the locals want it up here, the judge said, let's keep it down.
Well, it's a remarkable experience when you go there. How many national parks are there?
There are 58 natural national parks, but then there are lots of sites, many hundreds of sites around the country.
And when you go into to Yellowstone, I think this was the west entrance to Yellowstone, and you go right along the Madison River, and the next thing you know, there you are, and people are all pulled off the side of the roads taking pictures of elk. They're like 4 or 5 feet away from you. The place is swarming with elk down by the river and up in the hillside. It's a remarkable place.
I was on my honeymoon, and suddenly all the cars stopped, and we couldn't figure out why we stopped. And then this entire herd of buffalo came up the other way. It was the easiest way to get around, and they just walked right by the car, 100 of them.
Now, speaking of things like that, I think there was an episode in Glacier with our friend Jack Hanna and a grizzly bear, and also a less happy episode with a grizzly bear in Yellowstone Park. And some people are so damn dumb that they think that this is an amusement park, that these animals are not wild, and we can go up and ride them and pet them and lick them and poke them.
Yeah.
And you just don't do that to grizzly bears.
It's Yellowstone, not Jellystone.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I watched last night. I watched the Lewis and Clark film. And it's compelling again, and what an accomplishment compared to Men on the Moon, even greater in scope because of the circumstances, because of the context, than sending a man to the moon or sending men to outer space. And I couldn't help as I watched it again, and there's and Lewis and Clark were as well-behaved guests as possible under the circumstances. Dire is not even close to some of the circumstances. But yet, 2 Native Americans were shot and killed, I think.
Yes.
And was that the beginning of the demise of the Native American population in North America?
No, that was a really unfortunate moment. The Blackfeet were very...
No, I don't mean just the 2 guys who were killed, just in general.
Well, but even by the time they were coming up the Missouri, early on, they were reaching tribes, particularly of the Arikara tribes, and I guess what's now Nebraska and South Dakota, that had been decimated by smallpox, and it was assumed that they did not have any resistance or obviously any treating. They came in blankets traded by white settlers, so that already there was a sense that these native populations, 300 nations within our geographical United States, the continental United States, were going to be in serious trouble immediately. And that's the bittersweet story of Lewis and Clark. Yes, it was our first sort of moonshot out into outer space of the United States, but the results are not always happy for everybody who had called this land for hundreds of generations their own.
And it's established several times during the film that these encounters with the Native Americans, it's explained to them that things are going to be different now.
That's right. They've got a new great father in Washington.
And trade is going to be different, and there will be no warfare against these white men coming into your neighborhood. That can't but not have rankled everyone.
It's surprising. There were a couple of instances where when they were coming back, they were rowing very quickly, escaping the Blackfeet, and that encounter, that did result in the deaths, and the only deaths there. But in other places, there were very tense standoffs. And it's one of those dramatic stories where you think it's a history book thing, where you know everybody gets back alive. One guy dies of appendicitis, we think, but it's one of the most dramatic stories I've ever come across.
It's remarkable, and then one wonders, and it's hard to imagine saying this about a guy like Jefferson, should greater vision have been applied with regard to how we were going to trespass on these thousands and thousands and dozens of communities of Native Americans.
They hadn't invented the term yet, but manifest destiny was in full swing, and the idea that we were destined to own the whole continent and to spread out in this Garden of Eden that Jefferson thought it would be, obviously set in motion one of the greatest stories in all of world history, the story of the United States, but also one of the great tragedies.
Could you do a documentary now from the point of view of the Native Americans, from the crossing of the continent, the first crossing by white men, to date, about the lives and what befell Native Americans?
We made a series in the mid-90s called The West, which I'll send to you, because it does try to turn it around and see the West from a different lens, sort of foregoing the gunslingers and the cowboys and all the other myths that we tend to get distracted by, and talk about it as this crossroads of many different cultures coming in, Mexicans and others coming in from the south, Spanish, and Russians and English coming in from the north, and Chinese from the west, and us from the east. And so therefore we got to name it the West, but it was many of these points of the compass for other people.
Well, in watching this thing again, you're taken by many, many points where these guys are just hung out to dry. I mean, literally just hung out. And the interesting thing about, and I didn't realize this, but a principle of expeditionary activity: make sure you have enough tobacco and whiskey to get them so far that they can't desert.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's exactly.
We do the same with the band. And I'll tell you, I like that Dayton Duncan.
He's been my partner on a lot of these films. He and I did the National Parks together, and he feels the story of this country with a passion that we're always cutting away because he's about to cry real tears,
right? Yeah,
not crocodile.
Tell that. Well, I enjoyed that again and again, and that's the beauty of these things. The topics and the way they're handled is timeless. Now let's talk about, this is your second baseball film.
Yeah.
And this is called The 10th Inning. What are we dealing with in the
Well, in 94 we came out with this 9-episode, 9-inning, 18 and a half hours. You'd think that would be enough. History of the game. It came out in 94 when the strike hit, and you sort of went, I vowed not to do any sequels. But then the last 2 decades have been among the most consequential in baseball history. The strike, steroid, the shadow of that, but also an incredible resilience and amazing stories. Joe Torre taming the Bronx Zoo, the Atlanta trio of pitchers, Glavine and Maddox and Smoltz, the rise of Latin and Asian players, the home run chase, the steroids finally breaking, the sort of arc of Barry Bonds' life, the Red Sox coming back against the Yankees in 2004, and just another series of individuals that are more than the sum of games won and lost or careers rising and falling. This is a really good mirror of our country.
That's
First
right.
civil rights thing is not, after the Civil War, is not at a lunch counter. It's not in a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. It's on the diamonds of our so-called national pastime when Jackie Robinson comes. So baseball holds a lot of
What about like Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa, and now Roger Clemens, accused of lying before the United States Congress? What does that mean in the greater view? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, this is a serious thing, but it's funny. Baseball, the only sport where the statistics really matter, that we remember them, still nonetheless require us to tell stories, good stories about it. So if you look up 1919, it says the Cincinnati Red Stockings won the World Series, but it doesn't say anything about the Black Sox scandal when the White Sox took money from gamblers. We don't put an asterisk next to Babe Ruth, who never had to bat against Satchel Paige and never had to fly across the country or face the split-fingered fastball.
And who played many games drunk and also liked hookers.
Exactly. Unique among sports figures, but this steroids era.
I'm doing my own documentary, thank you.
This steroids era lengthened some pitchers' career.
Right.
It also inflated the home runs, but the good news is we're past it. It's in our rearview mirror, and there were no, huge explosion of 300 hitters. Nobody hit 406 as Ted Williams did way back in 41. Nobody had a 56-game hitting streak.
But easier to do, as great as Ted Williams was, easier to do then, when there wasn't pitching platoon, where there wasn't, a starter, two. Easier to hit 400. Not that it's easy, period.
No, but I just think that 300 hitter, which means the same thing to my 3 daughters, as it does to me, as it did to my dad, but more importantly, as it did to my great-great-grandfather, Abraham Burns, who fought in the Civil War. And there's nothing in American life that you can say that about. still retains its consistency. The 50 home run season that used to be a rarity, George Foster 77, Cecil Fielder 90, I think, and then you and I could hit 50 home runs in the major leagues during the steroids era. All of a sudden, it's a rarity. I mean, I doubt anyone's going to do it this year.
When I was I don't know when this took place, but a guy who could hit 30 home runs, steal 30 bases, and what was the other thing? There was like the 330s. That was considered, or 320s. What am I missing?
Well, no, it is just it's the home runs and the bases. That's what it is. And, you know, that's what Barry Bonds accomplished, 400 home runs and 400 stolen bases in '98. And that was relegated to the back of the sports pages. Well, on the front page of the newspapers, we were asking whether these two bulked up sluggers, Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, had hit one that day, knocking Bill and Monica off the front pages for a while that summer. And that's where we got... You know, we all bought into that steroid scandal.
Boy, she could swing the bat. But now, Roger Clemens, is he featured in the 10th inning?
Yeah, he is. I mean, he becomes, with Barry Bonds, the sort of the two poster boys of this scandal, and the difficulty for us to deal with the fact that there's a good chance that this man who does deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, forever tainted by this scandal, might also be, along with the Hall of Fame, in jail.
You know, at the time when this was all so stinking hot and everything, I worried about it because I just thought, well, what does it do to kids in sports generally? And now with some distance, I just think, oh, good Lord, people have been seeking an athletic advantage from the beginning of time.
From the beginning, and we try to detail this in the film, and they've been doing it, and that's the great thing, and the funny thing about baseball is that we've often very much tolerated the edge that you're trying to get, and since baseball mirrors our country, it also reflects what we do in our lives when we want to flip houses really quickly, and we think we can take a drug to have our kids do better in school, or we can do better in the bedroom, or whatever it is. We're pharmacologically inclined.
That's right. Sitting there watching television, you're bombarded by things that will give you an advantage. And I remember a couple of decades...
Restless leg syndrome.
Restless leg syndrome?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
I don't know what causes it, but your legs move involuntarily at night. Do you think you have a little?
No, but I worry that I do because I see this all the time.
You're asking for a checkup. But I remember Greenies. When I was a big Cincinnati Reds fan, we all talked about, oh, the season is so long and so grueling. In the clubhouse, you help yourself to these amphetamines, I guess is what they were.
And Babe Ruth had hot dogs and beer, and so, you know.
Yeah, all right. Let's show a clip of the 10th inning. You know what we're going to see?
Yeah, I think this is just, the question isn't black and white. It's much more complicated because this reflects our larger societal values. And the questions, we as fans too often judge in this kind of binary black and white way. And I think it's a little bit more complicated.
Here we go.
This is the time we live in. We believe that modern medicine can make us Superman. If our favorite ball players had succumbed to societal pressures to improve themselves, they are no worse than we are.
People get upset. Who in the whole country wouldn't take a pill to make more money at their job? You would. Hey, there's a pill and you're going to get paid like Steven Spielberg. You would take the pill. You just would.
It's complicated.
I'd like to see you do a documentary about my relatives. I mean, could you work that out for me?
I'm trying to finish the muffin one right now. It's in the oven.
Well, like them all, I'm sure it will be compelling viewing, and it begins September 28th on PBS. Ken, good to see you again. Thank you very much. We'll be right back with the specials, everybody.
We start with a ripe tomato.
Like this one.
Then we hand chop it.
It's the perfect addition to Applewood smoked bacon, aged blue cheese, and seasoned grilled chicken.
Naturally,
Wendy's BLT Cobb salad.
one of 4 fresh new salads.
You know when it's real.